rain came without warning that October night, heavy and relentless, drumming against the narrow windows of an old brick townhouse on Prospect Street. The streetlights outside flickered weakly, their glow bending through the mist like the last breath of something dying. Inside, the house was silent, except for the ticking of an antique clock and the faint hum of the storm. But that silence, that impossible, hollow silence, was what first made Margaret West uneasy. She had lived there for 12 years, a single mother raising her only daughter, Emily. Georgetown had always been her quiet refuge. Cobblestone streets, ivy walls, the charm of a city that never fully joined the modern world. But something about that night felt wrong, as if the air itself was waiting for something. Emily, just 11 years old, had fallen asleep hours ago, or so Margaret thought. The child's laughter had once filled that house. Now her voice had turned into whispers, conversations with no one. It started a month before. Emily complained about noises, scratching under the floorboards, whispers from the attic. Margaret dismissed it as imagination, the usual fears of a child in an old house. But then the objects began to move. Doors slammed without wind. Lights dimmed when Emily entered the room. The family cat hissed at empty corners. One night, Margaret woke to find her daughter sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, whispering words she didn't understand. By morning, Emily didn't remember a thing. At first, Margaret sought doctors, neurologists, psychiatrists. Each had the same answer: stress, night terrors, sleep paralysis. She wanted to believe them. She needed to. But each day the house grew colder, as if the warmth was being drained from it. Emily's drawings changed too. Dark figures, faceless shapes, and strange symbols that no teacher could identify. Then came the voice. It happened during breakfast. Emily's spoon dropped into her bowl, milk splashing across the table. Margaret looked up, ready to scold her. But the girl's face was frozen, her lips trembling as a low growl escaped from her throat. The sound was not human. It vibrated through the room, deep and guttural, as if something ancient had borrowed her body just to speak. "Make her stop," Margaret whispered, but Emily didn't hear. Her small hand twisted unnaturally, fingers tightening around the spoon until the metal bent. Then, as quickly as it came, it was over. Emily blinked, looked around, and asked what was wrong. The house changed after that. Lights flickered more often. The crucifix in the hallway fell from its hook 3 times in 1 week. The priest from the nearby parish, Father Brennan, visited out of courtesy. He was old, kind, his face lined with the weight of too many confessions. Margaret laughed nervously when she mentioned the odd things happening, but when she told him about Emily's voice, the sound, the strength, he didn't laugh. He asked to see the girl. That evening, Father Brennan climbed the narrow staircase to Emily's room. The child sat on her bed, her eyes distant, her skin pale as wax. The priest smiled gently and asked her about school, her friends, her favorite books. Emily didn't answer. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something he couldn't hear. Then she smiled, but it wasn't her smile. "Do you believe in God, Father?" She whispered. The voice was older, heavier. The priest froze. His lips parted, but no words came. The air in the room turned cold, his breath visible as he tried to answer. "Of course," he said. Emily laughed. Then where was he? When I fell, the laughter didn't sound like a child's. It was low and rumbling, like echoes from the bottom of a grave. Father Brennan stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a rug. He muttered a prayer under his breath and left the room, his heart hammering. Margaret followed, terrified. "What's wrong with her?" she asked. The old man didn't reply. He only said, "Keep a cross near her bed, and don't leave her alone at night." But Margaret did, because she had to sleep sometime. That was when the scratching began again, this time on the walls, not under the floor. The neighbors said they heard things too, growls, screams that vanished before anyone reached the door. The police came once. They found nothing but claw marks on the plaster and a smell, sulfur, faint but unmistakable. Father Brennan returned days later, accompanied by another priest, younger, quiet, and haunted. Father Damien Kearns had seen things during his time overseas, in places where faith was tested in the darkest corners of the world. When he entered Emily's room, she was tied to her bed for her own safety. Her skin was pale, her eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights. Damien didn't speak. He placed a small Bible on the desk and crossed himself. Emily began to shake violently. No voices filled the room. One screamed, one laughed, one begged for help, then all went silent. She stared at the priests, unblinking. "You can't save her," the voice said. "She's mine." Father Brennan began to pray, his voice trembling. The air vibrated, objects shook, and the room grew colder still. The sound of cracking wood filled the air as the bedposts strained against the ropes. And then, Emily levitated. It lasted only seconds, but it was enough to drain every drop of warmth from the men's faces. After that night, the exorcism began in secret. The church hesitated at first. These things weren't spoken of openly anymore. Science had replaced superstition, and possession belonged to the past. But what they witnessed couldn't be explained by medicine or madness. Days turned into nights. The priest prayed, fasted, and prepared. Emily's condition worsened. Scratches appeared on her arms, bruises shaped like hands. She screamed names no one had ever told her, languages no one taught her. And sometimes she cried for help in her mother's voice, though her lips never moved. Father Damien felt himself slipping into doubt. What if it wasn't real? What if it was all sickness? Or worse, his own delusion? But then, one night, he found the word help carved into the inside of his Bible cover, written in Emily's handwriting. He didn't tell anyone. The final ritual took place on a Sunday morning. The sky was grey, heavy with rain. Inside the room, candles flickered weakly as the priests stood side by side, their voices trembling as they spoke the Latin rites. Emily screamed, her body arching, the ropes cutting into her wrists. The windows rattled. Furniture lifted. For a moment, everything seemed to spin. Then, silence. Emily's eyes rolled back. Her breathing slowed. A shadow seemed to rise from her body, not visible but felt, like the moment before lightning strikes. Father Brennan raised his cross, shouting the final words of the prayer. The house shook violently, a deafening sound filling the air. And then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Emily fell limp. The priests approached cautiously. Her pulse was weak but steady. Brennan knelt beside her, whispering a prayer of thanks. But Damien's eyes lingered on the far corner of the room, where the wall seemed darker, deeper, as if something had been burned into it. A faint whisper echoed, too soft for anyone else to hear. "I'm still here." Weeks passed. Emily recovered slowly, her memories fragmented and dreamlike. The doctors called it trauma. The priests called it victory. Margaret sold the house and moved away before winter. She never went back, but the house remained. The new owners said they never felt comfortable there. Doors creaked at night. The smell of burning candles lingered long after the churchmen left. And sometimes, when the wind was still, they heard a faint voice from the attic. A child's laugh, followed by a whisper. Not all hauntings end when the rituals do. Some linger quietly, waiting for faith to falter again. So if you ever find yourself walking through the old streets of Georgetown on a cold October night, and you pass by that house, the one with boarded windows and ivy crawling up its walls, don't look too long. You might see a flicker of movement in the upstairs window. You might even hear your own name, and when you do, keep walking, because evil doesn't die. It just changes its voice, and sometimes it waits for someone who still believes. If this story kept you up tonight, imagine what else is out there waiting to be heard. This is Mr. Nightmare, and the next story might be closer than you think. Subscribe if you dare.